and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. As usual, I am joined with Nathan, and on this week's episode, we're going to start off on quite a really good note, aren't we? We've, of course, got the West Brom victory to talk about. We will then move on to what was kind of an absolutely hectic week on the transfer front. Obviously, signings almost been plucked out of nowhere. The drama of loan deals being cut short and then signed permanently. You could argue the addition of probably a marquee signing and, of course, the return of Ryan Giles. And then to drop the tone right back down to earth, we've, of course, got to talk about yesterday's defeat away at Preston North End. Nathan, how are you doing this evening? By the way, we're recording this on Sunday night, just in case anything happens on the transfer front.
Yeah, I'm all right, Chris. Not so bad. A very busy week on the Borough front, as you mentioned. And we've been trying our absolute best to keep our screen time down on our phones, however difficult that may be, and how difficult we found it this week with just being constantly barraged by transfer news from big journalists, from local journalists, and all the Borough fans keeping on top of it as well and tagging the Boropolis Twitter account in every Middlesbrough mention on Twitter. So yeah, thanks everyone for that. We are trying our absolute best to keep everyone up to date, and hopefully we're in for a busy last week of the transfer window as well. So yeah, keep your tabs on Boropolis social media sites, because I think we're in for a very big week. But on the pitch, more of the same, Chris. Consistently inconsistent. You have a top result on Tuesday night, and I left the ground on Tuesday saying, you can't get too high after this result. We've done it in the past. This season, we have a good result like West Brom on Tuesday night. We have to go to Preston and follow it up, and they didn't. So we find ourselves in the same situation over and over again. Can't string more than a result together, which is just unfortunate, but this is where we're at.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better, really. I think, in chronological order, obviously the best place to start is West Brom. I know part of the sort of pre-match build-up was centred around transfers, and obviously there was links on Monday, but I think in terms of running order, if you want to call it that, we'll go for West Brom first, start off on a nice high, then kind of go to transfers, ins and outs, talk about really another high, because it's been a largely positive week, and then finish off on a glum note with Preston yesterday, and obviously looking ahead to the following week, and them lot at the Riverside on Monday evening, on deadline day. Tuesday night was kind of the pre-match build-up, at least, was centred around the fact that George Edmondson was rumoured to have been recalled. Of course, the reports come out probably 25 minutes before the teams were announced, so we basically just said, right, well, it's pointless posting something yet, we'll hold off and we'll see. If he's not in the squad, then I guess that's confirmation as to kind of what the reports are saying. Now, he wasn't in the squad. Middlesbrough put the statement out shortly after the lineup was announced, and of course, he was going to be recalled by Ipswich. Now, we'll get on to kind of how that's played out, and obviously the fact that he's back now when we jump onto the topic of transfers. But in terms of when that team did come out, we, of course, saw the welcome return of Aidan Morris to the starting 11, and we also saw Luke Ayling come into that starting 11. All in all, really, possibly you could argue one of, if not Middlesbrough's kind of best available teams.
Yeah, 100%, Chris. It was the best team that we could have put out on the night. Probably our two strongest centre halves, which says something based on yesterday's performance at Preston. But yeah, it was probably our strongest side that we could field. Morris, a welcome addition back into the middle of the park. And yeah, going into the game, you could tell the difference already, just upping the intensity and controlling the game, telling people where to be, telling people to move, stopping lackadaisical, lazy, measured, calm approach.
Pedestrian, I think, is the word I would
Pedestrian.
describe it prior
Yeah,
to Aidan Morris.
yeah. The Barlaser in midfield has given us the last 2 months, but just an instance in the first half, Dale Fry failing to step into the 15 yards of space ahead of him, and Morris on the ball saying, "Step up, hurry up. We need to take the game to these and rip the game away from them." And we've been lacking that. We've said it on this podcast that we've been in games where it's almost as if the players just expect that teams are just gonna let us in at some point. It doesn't work like that. You have to knock on the door. And yeah, the game in the end was pretty controlled throughout from us. I didn't feel like we were under any danger in the first half at all. In the second half, there was a 10-minute spell maybe where West Brom were on top, but there wasn't a whole lot that came from that. They hit the post. But yeah, we'd also spoken about a couple of weeks ago shots from outside the box. And ironically, both of our goals come from players shooting from outside the box. Hayden Hackney, great effort from him to drive a little bit further up the pitch. Morris being in the team freed him up and made him look a lot more comfortable.
It was just absolutely clear as day. The impact on the whole team, but mainly Hayden Hackney. That midfield partnership just looked... Well, Hayden Hackney looked like a different player, to be honest. All of the freedom that he had, the lack of kind of... I don't know, the lack of... It almost felt like he had a lack of worry in his performance. He felt like he could go and express himself and go and affect the game without the worry of Dan Barlaser giving it to the striker or being dispossessed or just kind of running through treacle trying to mark any of the attacking players from the opposing teams. And call it harsh, but unfortunately it is rather true, and I think most would admit that. But yeah, I totally agree. Hayden Hackney and Aidan Morris, it was a pleasure to see them back at kind of where they'd left off before Aidan Morris had picked up that injury.
Yeah, 100% Chris. Going in the lead at half time as well made me feel even more comfortable than I already did in the game. I thought that we played a really good first half, and moving on into the second, wanted more of the same intensity. There was a noticeable influx of sharper passing and just everyone being quicker to step onto the opposition when they had the ball, pressing them a little bit more, and yeah, just not letting them do whatever they liked, which we allowed Portsmouth to do in the previous game, especially in the second half at Fratton Park. I didn't think that we started the second half greatly. I think you could sort of see that it was Morris's first game back. It was a little bit of a drop off from his first half performance, but we stuck in there. As I say, we didn't really attack all too much, but yeah, West Brom hit the post. But other than that, we weren't really in any danger. And then, yeah, on the break.
I think just on that spell, I think it felt like it went on for probably longer than what it did. But as you say, up until Doug's goal, we hadn't really managed to even counter them. But it was pressure with almost not really kind of any worry. As you say, the major worry was, of course, when I think it was Holgate that wins the header from Mowatt's ball into the box. And to be fair to Tom Glover, I think he actually tips it onto the post, to be fair. I don't think it's a direct contact. I think he does get a fingertip to it. So credit to Tom Glover there. It's kept us in the game at that point. But yeah, it was a case of probably one of the best examples of when you're in a stadium compared to watching the game from a stream or on telly or from your sofa, where because of the fact that the atmosphere changes a little bit and everyone sort of reverts back to the seat a little bit and sort of starts to begin to bite their nails, it makes you think that you're under a lot more pressure than what you actually perhaps are. And I think probably Middlesbrough fans watching it on telly may have thought, well, actually, the possession stats might look well in their favour, but it's certainly, shots wise or big openings, as I say, it was only really that header that they had. So I was pleased, like you say, that the thing I was most pleased about was the fact that we weren't really allowing West Brom to get loads of crosses into the box. And I must say, given the whole discussion about fullbacks this season, I actually felt that Neto had quite a decent game, to be fair. And West Brom have some decent wide players. I think Ayling just about dealt with it. And I must say, before we do get on to one of the main highlights of the game, of course, the Bendo goal, I know there's been a whole sort of discussion about leadership and things like that. And to be honest, it's not even really a point about someone shouting on the pitch to players and organising and things like that. I don't know if you noticed it, but at 1-0, there was 2 balls on the pitch, and one of the stewards tried to run on the pitch and get the second ball off. Of course, with there being 2 balls on the pitch, it delayed West Brom from taking a quick throw in. And Luke Ayling has just gone through this steward, and I've never seen anyone fold and just kind of one of those moments where the poor guy looked like he just wanted the ground to swallow him up. He almost kind of just, I think he got his foot on the ball, took it off, and then just ran off and sort of sat on a stool and just like head in hands. But yeah, I mean, it just made me laugh more than anything because everyone talks about leadership, but we were hoping for leadership in terms of organising the players rather than just bollocking the stewards. I mean, yeah, it's a funny old point, and there's been lots of discussion about it, but I don't know if you picked up on that. I just wanted to highlight it because it made me laugh, to be honest.
Yeah, I did. We've spoken about instances like that with Tommy Smith over the years where you just need a little bit of game management and being sort of wise to how the game is going. But yeah, as you mentioned, the big moment in the game is Doak on the break. Despite how frustrating it is to drop points to teams down the bottom of the table, that's 6 points off West Brom this season, who were a direct playoff rival. So it is very pleasing. But as said at the start of the podcast, you have to follow those up. And I wasn't getting carried away after just one performance on Tuesday night.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, this season is really been the story of false dawns. But yeah, it's a case of it's such a big win. You obviously get the huge news after the game that Doak's going to be staying. That puts to bed one of the sagas that we've had for the full month. And it just gives everyone a lift. And you think, right, please, for the love of God, Middlesbrough, give us, follow this up with some more good news in the transfer window. And then go to Preston and follow it up with another 3 points and really start to put some momentum together. And ultimately, that's just not the case. I mean, it feels strange kind of going back to that point in the week because there was so much optimism, I felt, given that you mentioned the discourse going into West Brom was, of course, Mowbray's got Carrick's card marked in the sense of he's watched just this many times. He knows what we're about. Carrick's really struggling. And for the first time, really, and we probably sounded as though that was the case last week on the podcast, it did feel like there had been a little bit of a turning of the tide in terms of just general fan sort of feeling towards Michael Carrick. So had we have not picked up that 3 points on Tuesday night, you kind of wonder what position we would have been in, or if it was a case of has that kind of been a bit of the ultimate and a very timely sort of papering over the cracks for Michael Carrick and his position. But as I say, we were in such a positive position. We obviously got that huge news about Ben Doak at full time. And I mean, just touching on that, Nathan, we've had these 2 major sagas going on. And it had been alluded to in the build up to the game that obviously we had a deadline in terms of when Liverpool could recall him. And in fairness, I know we both said the same. I actually felt that Ben Doak was quite quiet. It was one of his poorer games, but then he gives you a moment of absolute magic, which ultimately wraps up the game. And that's one kind of part of his game, which he said post-match, he's hoping to improve on, hoping to score more goals and hoping to, you know, as much as watching him run fullbacks ragged, you do want a little bit more from him in the sense of his goal contributions. So very nice in that sense, and just mainly on the transfer front, just nice to put one kind of major saga, as I say, to bed and one less thing to worry about in the final week of the transfer window.
Yeah, 100%. We talked about in the summer signing difference makers, and Ben Doak gives you that. Enigmatic, really. He's a fantastic footballer, and he's one of those where his dynamism can just turn a game one way or another. So keeping him on board to the end of the season is really, really important. But the transfer news, Chris, what a week for incomings,
Yeah,
outgoings. Just an absolutely mental week. Obviously, starting with that Edmondson recall, the Doak news following the game, and then the Wednesday morning. It was just relentless. I mean, where do we actually start? Is there a chronology
yeah.
from 9 a, 8 a.m. when we woke up, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. It felt like every hour there was something new.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we're actually going back in time in terms of the first link, because actually the interest in Glenn Kamara was initially reported on Monday morning, I think. And it's one of them where Glenn Kamara is in the exact same boat as Ross McCormack, Robert Snodgrass, those types of players where every window without fail, we are linked with Glenn Kamara. So I actually sent you, because the thing is, what usually happens is we'll get tagged in a post. Obviously, I'm sort of scanning if and when I can, and Nathan obviously the same. And I found the link, and I actually messaged Nathan and said, because it was from L'Equipe or L'Equipe, or I don't really know. I'm not fluent in French, so excuse if I've battered the pronunciation of that. But I said to Nathan, is it one of them where I think it was Ipswich and Southampton that have been mentioned? Is it worth posting this? Because it's the same old story every transfer window. But I mean, it is a really big source. Like, it's France's biggest sort of football news source. Is it worth it? And I thought, do you know what? I looked at the Twitter account. I thought, if that was any other news source reporting Middlesbrough interested in a player with a following that big, I'd definitely be posting it. So I just thought, yeah, go on then. So, of course, posted it initially, to be fair, and people did poke fun at it, and Nathan rightly corrected me. I posted the Ren hashtag for their most recent game. So I edited that. So if you got like 4 notifications from Boropolis and you've got notifications on, I do apologise. That was completely my fault. But not long after that, in fairness, we got confirmation from both Dom and Craig from the Gazette that actually there was substance to this, and the fact that although it is a very much a tricky deal to do, and financially one that it would probably happen later on in the window, kind of where we have confirmation of where we're at with balancing the books and players going in and out, but there is definitely interest. And more importantly, he's not the only midfield target for Middlesbrough. They do see that as an area where they probably will attempt to at least strengthen, which, okay, at that point, we hadn't seen it in Morris's performance, but when we talk about Johnny Howson still not fit, and there's sort of no time scale on that, and also the Dan Barlaser situation, a lot of people would, and rightly so, be quite pleased to see a little bit of a, I think, importantly, just a destroyer type profile in there. Someone to just stick on for the last 10, 15 minutes of games and just stop attacks. And Glenn Kamara certainly gives you a bit more of that than what kind of the options we've got at the moment.
100%, yeah. With Morris only just coming back from injury, I think that it's important to have someone who's a direct sort of competition for Morris in that more defensive midfield role. And Kamara would give you that. Obviously got championship experience last year for Leeds, played a lot of games for them, and from everything that we'd seen of him last year and also heard from Leeds fans, he seems like the type of player that we'd want at the football club. A player that can get about the pitch, sticks his foot in, keeps things ticking over. Yeah, he is the type of midfielder that I'd like at the football club. And the sort of tick box exercise for me, looking at players when we're linked to them, is, are they better than what we've already got? And I think there is an argument to be made that Glenn Kamara is good enough to walk into Middlesbrough starting 11 and improve us, really. So really pleasing one, but there isn't too much in it yet. We just know that there's interest in it. There's no bids made yet. So we'll wait and see on that front in the week. But the goalkeeping situation, Chris, what a situation this has turned out to be. Obviously, the injuries over the last 2 seasons have been nothing short of ridiculous, really. But I know this is sort of later in the week as well, but Seny Dieng has been in and out the team, and Thursday I heard about it, and Friday it came out that Seny Dieng has had surgery on what looks like something that's going to keep him out for long term, possibly over
Yeah,
6 months.
yeah.
So
It's gone from, sorry to jump in there, Nathan. It's gone from, as you say, one of those positions where you felt were quite well stocked. You know, Seny Dieng, Sol Bryn, whichever order you put them two in, and then Glover's a good third choice, not a bad second choice, and can do a job as a first choice when called upon. Now we are literally down to Tom Glover. And the links had always been there. I think it was a position where even had Dieng have not picked up this injury, to be honest, there was question marks about his future. And as you say, it sort of ties in with events later on in the week, given Dieng's long-term injury. I think at least it clears up that actually him and Michael Carrick weren't sort of having regular boxing matches, which is what some kind of people on social media would have you believe. But yeah, I mean, supposedly we were in advanced talks with Travers during the day. I think that was reported from Pete O'Rourke, who is usually pretty bang on with most of our stuff, to be fair, and EFL stuff in general. And then there was a little bit of a delay. We kind of expected him to be the one in of the week, or at least the first. Went a little bit quiet, and then we got confirmation that actually, due to injuries to the third choice, or what was going to be the second choice at Bournemouth, he's picked up an injury there, keeper. So now it means that Travers is a little bit stuck, and it's kind of left us in a bit of a pickle, really, because you want him in as quickly as possible. But now I guess we're back in a situation where it feels like, I mean, he was on the bench for Bournemouth on Saturday. It now feels like there's probably going to have to be at least kind of one or two dominoes fall into place before that deal can eventually go through. I think, as I say, it's just a case of hoping that they do indeed fall into place, because if Bournemouth don't go and recruit a keeper, and this third or second choice keeper that has been injured, it is going to be a long term. You do kind of worry about that a little bit, because we're one injury away from having, I mean, absolutely no disrespect to the goalkeeper that was on the bench yesterday, but I couldn't even tell you his name.
yeah, yeah, we're in a little bit of dire straits in the goalkeeper situation. We'll wait and see. Thankfully, we haven't got a game for, well, over a week now, until Sunderland. So hopefully we can get someone else in the door. Then Bryn Johnson, young lad, 18-year-old from Eastbourne Borough, signed for the club, going straight into the under-21s. Good to see forward planning. Then the big one, Chris. This is when the real stuff comes to the fore, and it's strange, and it hit me as being a real baffling deal, really. The this one, because we didn't get from anyone, either on the Hull side or on the Borough side, that a deal was agreed. There was nothing. No, nothing from Sky, nothing. Just that Ryan Giles is Borough bound and it'll be done next week. Right? So what are the figures? Has there been a deal agreed? Is it a permanent? Is it a loan? I don't know. So we had no idea. And then on Thursday morning, there was a rumour that he was at Rockcliffe. And I think that everyone just got more and more excited and teased throughout the day that this was actually a possibility. And 2 hours later, there's a photo of Ryan Giles signing his contract with Carrick with his arm round him.
Yeah, it was it was a funny old day Thursday, wasn't it? It was like a complete mix of emotions. There was genuinely a point where I genuinely just thought Nathan's going to have a breakdown. His heartstrings are being pulled with that much. He's been trying to negotiate deals himself. He's been bumping into Gilo in service stations and trying to have a word in his ear. Will he, won't he? As you say, it was so bizarre that we got no official confirmation. And then I think it was actually just after Carrick's press conference had finished, and weirdly enough, fell right on my lunch at work, and it was Ruben Sellers saying that Ryan Giles had been granted to go and have a medical at a club. Give a little bit of a smile when asked if it was Middlesbrough, but of course didn't fully give it away. And I must say, I was told early on Thursday morning that actually there was late interest from Birmingham. And obviously I didn't share this. I didn't want to kind of... There's certain things, obviously, that we would share if we were really confident on it, but it was a little whisper that I was told. And I messaged Nathan, and genuinely at this point, I thought I'm actually worried for his health, because if he gets as close as what's been reported to having Ryan Giles back at Middlesbrough and he's snatched away from under his nose again, I don't think he gets beyond this point. Anyway, then we get the photo of Ryan Giles. And initially, again, you referred to it at the beginning of the podcast, people tag us in things, and usually it's a case of I'll have a look. You know, we've both been doing this for long enough where you kind of initially look what the post is, go to the following, go to the account, see if there's any kind of... And it was such a weird one because it was quite literally a screenshotted photo of Ryan Giles. And I'm thinking, is that this season's training kit? It definitely looks like it could be. So then frantically, I've jumped onto Middlesbrough's account, scrolling through all of the posts, stumbled upon Dale Fry's interview from a few weeks ago when he got that milestone in terms of starts for Middlesbrough. I thought, that's the top. That's the exact top that Ryan Giles is wearing. I thought, yeah, it's if that's AI or someone's edited that, then they are one seriously talented person. And I thought, no, this has got to be spot on. Anyway, put it up. Obviously, at that point, people thought it's on. It's got to be on. And then, as we obviously approached the evening, we kind of were getting closer and closer, and you just thought, please, just announce this. Put us out of our, I don't want to say misery, just end it all, like end this saga once and for all, please. And then a few minutes before kind of everyone, you get to like 5:30, 6 o'clock on a night, don't you? And you think, right, if it's going to be announced, this will be when it is. Article from Baz Cooper, Ryan Giles, deal agreed, it's all confirmed, finally an end to the saga, but there's a twist. And I'm thinking, what on earth is going on here? Ryan Giles has joined Middlesbrough, but it's a loan deal and there's no option to buy. And I'm thinking, I've gone from one high to just being absolutely, completely baffled, because, I mean, it was always just a case of Hull don't want him anymore. He's going back to Middlesbrough. It'll probably be a cheap deal, and that'll be that. And then he was announced, and I mean, it was complete elation for a large section of Middlesbrough fans, including me and you, just seeing him back in a red and white shirt. The announcement video was great, obviously, seeing his interview, seeing his smile, this, that, and the other. But then you kind of think, well, where's the loan deal come out of? And obviously it transpires, we've seen since that, you know, it's a very much a case of Middlesbrough aren't paying his full wages, and also both clubs have kind of agreed that should it work out for all parties, if Ryan Giles impresses, that like Hull don't want him, Middlesbrough would want him. And obviously Ryan Giles has come out and said that he absolutely wants to make it permanent as well. But then everyone, and understandably so, went, well, what happens if he comes and tears it up? There's no option to buy. And then Hull go, right, 8 million for him if you want him permanently. And it kind of just felt like, yeah, we're absolutely delighted, but there's one final twist in the saga, and it's just like, why did that have to happen?
Yeah, it was a very strange feeling from, yes, it's happening, the photos there were all set, to that, and I'm like, oh, And then the announcement comes up and I'm like, haha, he's back. But, oh, so yeah, a very, very sort of strange twist in the tail, I suppose. But the top and bottom of it is that Ryan Giles is back. I think me and you discussed this the other week that it just feels like we needed to see him back in a red shirt again. It doesn't matter how it ends, but we needed an ending
I
and
needed closure.
needed closure, yeah. And we are going to get that. So that is great. It is really important. It does feel like an upgrade in the left back department, despite his rough form over the last 2 seasons. But we know what he can do. We know that Michael Carrick can get the best out of players. We're just hoping and praying that he can do the same with Ryan Giles. And yeah, it felt like a big one to get over the line. It gave everyone a really big boost after the win on Tuesday night. And yeah, the social media sort of posts were very nice to see the guess who's back. And yeah, it was just a very nice moment. And then also happening on Thursday. What an incredible day.
Yeah, just I mean, actually, I think it was Wednesday when the bid for Morgan Whittaker was initially placed, and I'm guessing that's what you're referring to, Nathan. And it was almost a case of Nathan sent me the screenshot, and I thought, nah, there's no chance. And how ironic is it that of all the journalists, it's Alan Nixon that's broke the story? And I must say, a lot of Plymouth fans have said, yeah, he's been spot on for us kind of for the last few years. And I was trying not to read too much into it. And initially, I actually thought, do you know what? I'm not posting it. I'm just going to wait until we get some kind of confirmation, either from people that we would trust, or Dom, or Craig, and then I'll put it out there. And well, yeah, I mean, we got confirmation from both. Really, it was a case of, yeah, there's definite interest. It's not quite at the figures that have initially been mentioned, which I think initially it was reported as 6 million or roughly 6 million or something like that. And you kind of felt like, okay, Middlesbrough are going to have a right go at this, but Burnley parachute payments, it's going to end one way. And then it was Thursday morning, following the Wednesday evening, of which Morgan Whittaker wasn't in the squad. We'll get onto that whole saga as well. And I think following the Plymouth manager's whole outburst, it was reported in the Plymouth press, or the Plymouth side of things, that actually Middlesbrough were the favourites. And you thought, I mean, all right, we'll take it, but I'm sure Burnley will not quite agree with that take. And then, as you say, it just become almost, yeah, Middlesbrough are in the driving seat here. And then all of a sudden, bid accepted. Alan Nixon again, and I thought, I'm not even taking the chance here, because he's called the interest first out of anyone. There's substance in it. I'm gonna go with him. I'm gonna trust him on this one, as much as you can anyway, with Alan Nixon. And yeah, it turned out to be true. Bid accepted. BBC Tees, medical, and then you're kind of thinking, right, nervously waiting here a little bit. And then you got the transfer centre update, and it was like, oh, Burnley are actually considering coming and matching the offer. And it was a case of, for a few hours, everyone was like, is he having his medical or not? Can someone please just tell us where he is? We want minute by minute updates of his whereabouts. And obviously, it transpires yet again that Middlesbrough have acted. And only days after the interest is initially reported, Middlesbrough have went out, and as I said at the top end of the podcast, have got themselves a marquee addition really in that forward line. And what I think is most impressive about this is obviously the caliber of the player that we're getting, but also the fact that it's been pretty much cleared up across the board that actually this wasn't a case of, well, we'll announce this and Latilaf will immediately go. It's a case of Middlesbrough have been able to do this from a financial perspective due to the fact that they got such a good deal for Isaiah Jones. Now, if we're talking about, and this is certainly no disrespect to Izzy, but when we're talking about someone that was in the team of the season for the championship last year, was only 12 months ago the subject of interest and inquiries from Lazio, and 12, 15 million bids being rejected. And I think even in the summer, Burnley had a bigger bid rejected. And yes, he's a Middlesbrough player now, Nathan. It was out of the blue, but I mean, what a statement of intent, really.
Yeah, it is 100%. And strangely enough, a lot of his 20 goals and 8 assists last season came in the first half of the season when he was playing alongside Finazaz. So we'll wait and see as to how Michael Carrick's going to construct this forward line, because obviously Morgan Whittaker is a predominantly right winger. Ben Doak's staying now. This was announced on Tuesday. And then the Whittaker link come up, and we both immediately said, well, first of all, Alan Nixon's reported it, so we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Second of all, why would we? Why would we be going in for a right winger when Ben Doak's still at the football club and is now staying? Well, we've got ourselves a player that is top level right winger for the division, 100%. His ball striking is simply top notch for the level. But yeah, a real statement of intent. And I think that what shows that as well is he's decided to come to Middlesbrough over Burnley.
Yeah, and I think just touching on the fee, obviously it was initially reported at 8 million, and there was different figures, 6 million up front. We got confirmation from Dom Shaw, which obviously we know will be absolutely spot on, that the ultimate kind of final deal is £5 million up front plus a potential 2.5 million in add-ons. And I mean, as I say, when you consider the types of inquiries and approaches that Plymouth have received for Morgan Whittaker over the last year, it does seem like Middlesbrough have been able to go out and get a certain caliber of player for a price that probably, if I'm a Plymouth fan, I'm a bit annoyed about, really. In terms of obviously the whole circus around that situation, obviously initially we got the whole story of Plymouth's manager saying that he was selected and he didn't turn up to the ground on time. Prior to obviously the signing being confirmed, we saw Morgan Whittaker at their game on Wednesday night. And I'm not going to lie, at that point I thought, if he's really kicked up a fuss and said, I'm not playing, why would he go to the stadium? And I mean, you could argue, I don't think anyone's ever going to get the full truth. But you could argue, I think the Plymouth manager has seen an opportunity to deflect a little bit after being absolutely pummeled off Burnley, and grasped it with both hands here. And look, it's probably somewhere in the middle in terms of what the actual truth is. Morgan Whittaker has come out and said, listen, I never, ever refused to play for Plymouth. It was a case of, I was told because of there being bids on the table from both Middlesbrough and Burnley that the club don't particularly want to risk me. I said I was available. I trained with people that weren't available, come in and trained on the Thursday as well, the day after. And basically, it stands to reason from my viewpoint in the fact of, had he have really kicked up a fuss and said, I am not point blank playing, then why would you then go and watch the game? And to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really mean anything anyway. I don't particularly care. But I did see a lot of people kind of saying, well, it's put me off this signing a little bit. We don't know what kind of attitude he's got. Look, he's had a wonderful season last year. He stuck it out at Plymouth when he could have potentially kicked up a fuss in the summer, or even last January when they were in real trouble. And yeah, okay, they're in trouble again this season. But he's stayed over the course of the summer and got to a point where there's interest again, bids on the table. Look, as I say, it's possibly not one that we need to really go in depth on, but I do think the Plymouth manager's known exactly what he was doing on Wednesday night, and thankfully, we've kind of had that cleared up a little bit anyway. And then, obviously, with Whittaker and that excitement, on the same day, we did also get confirmation that George Edmondson was coming back. It was all just a big case of Ipswich being a bit arsey, to put it bluntly. It was never going to be a big money purchase. We discussed it when we thought it was going to happen last week, Nathan, and my viewpoint still hasn't changed. And it's just nice to kind of get that one confirmed.
Yeah, 100%. Good to get that one over the line. And I think the main point is it frees up a loan spot. But yeah, Edmondson coming in, it's important to have backup centre halves. And yeah, with what we're going to get onto now, it's really important that we've got another centre half available, because the outgoings of the week, news on Josh Coburn, Millwall want to sign him permanently, although he is currently injured. There isn't any bid on the table so far. Michael Carrick said, yeah, I'm sure they do want to sign him permanently. He's a good player. That's what his quote was. A bit of a shock one. Mike Hamilton.
Yeah, I think, as you say, it was more so a shock just because of those Carrick quotes, I think, only a week earlier. And I actually, in the case of kind of everything that we're going to discuss, in terms of outgoings, I almost have more or less the same standpoint on all of them. I think Millwall wanting Josh Coburn permanently. Look, I'm not one of those in the sort of Josh Coburn is a terrible forward and isn't championship level sort of camp. I actually think that Josh Coburn will probably go on and have an all right career, probably, quite a good career. I think ultimately Millwall and their style historically is way more suited to what Josh Coburn wants to do on a football pitch. And I think he will score goals. You've seen in the short amount of games that he did have before that injury that he was doing quite well, got himself on the score sheet a few times. And he's that kind of striker. If Middlesbrough can get a good fee for him, look, I think it's probably one of them where the next stage of his career, he's going to want to be playing games. And I know he's had his injury problems and whatnot, but it makes sense. On Micah Hamilton, again, like we touched on following the Blackburn Cup game, he needs football. He's going to get it at Stockport. And I don't know if you listen to this, but quite interestingly, I actually listened to Dave Challoner's interview in terms of what he thought that Micah Hamilton could bring. And he said, obviously, he's a lot different to Louis Barry in the sense of Barry plays off the left, is more so a striker playing on the wing, very direct. Micah Hamilton is more so, can play a little bit deeper, can play off the left, but also can play off the striker as more of a 10, or even potentially a little bit deeper than that as an 8. And I think one thing that stood out for me in terms of what I've seen of Micah Hamilton is he doesn't really have that winger's instinct. And I know not every winger has that instinct. Everyone's not a Ben Doak in terms of modern day wingers, but it does seem like he'd much rather pass the ball or try and intricately find a through ball than dribble at a fullback and beat them and whip across him. And it'll be interesting to see what positions he picks up playing for Stockport and what position he's deployed in. What's going to benefit him is men's football, getting bashed about in League One a little bit. And let's face it, he's not going to a team scrapping for their lives. He's going to a Stockport team that have done really well this season. He's going to get football and he's going to be playing in a team that try and play football as well, which is, sometimes important in the sense of, yes, okay, it's not exactly what Michael Carrick's going to try and do, but he's certainly not just going to be going to a League One team that bang the ball forward from the centre horse, and he's just going to try and hopefully get on the end of second balls. In terms of other departures, because of obviously the arrival of Ryan Giles, it does mean that a left back, it always felt like it was going to be the case, at least one of Neto or Lucas Engel were going to go. Obviously, with Neto ultimately being the most recent of the purchases, and I think probably just edging it based off what we've seen, possibly a slightly better kind of just purely a defender than what Lucas Engel is. I don't think there's much in it, I must say. But Lucas Engel going out on loan to the MLS Cincinnati, and that deal does have an option of a permanent. I think it was kind of written on, the writing was on the wall in the sense of Middlesbrough were never going to have, well, 4 fullbacks when you include Alex Bangura as well, who obviously long-term injury, yes, but we're going to still hopefully have him there or thereabouts at some point. And then I guess with we'll get on to the latter laugh. I mean, that's the constant saga that we've had to discuss numerous times throughout this month. But the only real one which has kind of come out the blue a little bit and shocked a few people is Matt Clark rumoured to be potentially leaving the club. And a lot of Championship interest in him. Derby County and Portsmouth, 2 of the clubs that have been sort of prominently mentioned. And of course, they're also 2 of his previous clubs. But I know we have a laugh and a joke about Matt Clark in terms of what Borough have available at centre-half and perhaps what they're lacking a little bit at the moment in terms of just completely no-nonsense defending. Where do you stand on this one? Because I think always you should probably, in terms of not just any Championship squad, but a Championship squad with 2 centre-halves that really don't have the best injury track record anyway, you've always got to have 4. And if Clark went, that only leaves you with 3. I know Ayling can fill in there, but Dijksteel is also a bit of a one where you never really know when he's going to be available consistently. I think if Matt Clark was to go, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I wouldn't be devastated. And there's been rumours, to be fair, for quite a while that he does want to consistently play. But I think we need to replace him, to be honest.
I agree. You can't go into the second half of the season with 3 centre halves and Luke Ayling as a centre half option either, especially with Dijksteel's track record. Ayling's been out for periods of time this season, obviously getting on a bit as well. Yeah, we certainly need someone else in the door if Matt Clark is to go. Obviously, the only left-footed defender that we've got in the squad as well, which, look, it provides balance as much as people sort of might make the point that he looks a little bit unorthodox on the ball. I think that the sort of options that being a left-footed defender on the left-hand side of the defence opens up is really important at times. Obviously, you mention is just him as a player, no nonsense defender, always good for them sticky games where you're up against it a little bit and you just need someone who's going to put everything on the line for the cause. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what goes on with Matt Clark. But if he does go, we do need a replacement.
On the outgoing front, that name again, Emmanuel Latte-Lath. We did get an update prior to yesterday's game, and it was a bit, and it's come from a very, very respected journalist. Again, the same one that brought the story. But the update felt a little bit wishy-washy, didn't it? It wasn't quite, he's going. It wasn't quite, there's an agreement. It wasn't quite, this is the reason why he doesn't want to go. It was a bit all over the place, and it was the 3 parties, Latte-Lath, Middlesbrough, and Atlanta United are at a standstill. And from that article, again, from a very good source in terms of MLS transfer news, interestingly, that article said that Borough sources are adamant that Latte-Lath has been granted permission to travel to the US. And it also referred to the fact that Latte-Lath is open to the move. Now, given that there's reportedly an agreement in principle or a verbal agreement, and if Latte-Lath does want this move, then I can't really think of any other reason that would be stopping this from moving on. And from our understanding, as we've said previously, this isn't a case of Middlesbrough or scrambling to try and get a replacement sorted. They've got their ducks in order. They know kind of exactly where they want to be and what they need to do should Emmanuel Latte-Lath go. Now, like I mentioned previously, I think Middlesbrough now need to just put a deadline on this and say, if this isn't done by this point of the week, he's staying. And that's it. Whether he kicks up a fuss, whether his agent goes to the press, whatever happens, he is staying because it's just going to be too disruptive in terms of timescale wise. It's obviously been further complicated by the fact that he goes and picks up a groin injury yesterday. It's just still up in the air, really. We're no further forward from what, 2 weeks now?
Yeah, it's a very strange situation, and the injury is only going to complicate that if there is an injury there. I'd be inclined to say that he'd still go, that he still will go. Whether it's Atlanta or whether it's elsewhere, I think that there is a leaning from my gut instinct that he won't be a Middlesbrough player, and that was yesterday. Hobbling off at Deepdale in front of a packed out away end was the last time that that section of Borough supporters will see him in a red shirt again. That's my gut instinct. I don't have any sort of secret insight, but yeah, I just believe that this time next week we'll have a new gunman up front ready for the Mackhams on the Monday night. But yeah, I'd say you're right. There needs to be a deadline. Personally, obviously, I'm not the one making the calls, but mine would be Wednesday. If there's nothing by Wednesday, with then 4 days left to get someone in and get them settled in and likely be starting on Monday night against Sunderland, I'd be giving it no go. But I'm not the one making the decisions. I'm not the one being offered 20, 21, 22 million pounds for a centre forward. So yeah, we'll wait and see.
Preston, typical Middlesbrough. How do we find ourselves here again?
As mentioned at the top of the show, Chris, we are consistently inconsistent. Start the game well, unchanged from Tuesday night. Ryan Giles on the bench, over 5,000 Borough fans in that away end at Deepdale. Phenomenal support once again. And yeah, we started the game pretty well. I thought we were on top, created a couple of chances, a couple of decent crosses into the box. But yeah, we started pretty okay, and I thought, right, we are in business here. And then we let Preston get into the game. And this lot simply cannot perform when they have a large away following. Constantly backed in massive, massive numbers, consistently just fail to appease the travelling fans. It is just so poor, the fact that we can throw in a performance again like yesterday, where for maybe 10 minutes in the first half and 15 minutes at the start of the second half, we were good enough. And
I would say longer in the second half. I would say
mhm,
longer. I mean, it may be a case of because we were putting them under, like when West Brom put us under, it felt like an eternity because you're just waiting for the ball to hit the back of the net. But as you say, it's just. I mean, we'll get onto the second half,
my,
Nathan.
my point is it's a telltale sign of the division that we can throw in yesterday a result again, winning. So now we've picked up three points from nine, or four points from 12, if you want to go further back. 4 points from the last possible 12, and we still find ourselves in the playoffs. The division's shit, is my point. The division
Yeah,
absolute
yeah.
the division's pathetic in all truth. The top four are again, it's the same as last year, really. The top four are clear and gone. That's just how it is, unfortunately. There's your title or promotion race with those four sides. The rest of it, it's a scrap between teams to put a run of consistency together. And at the minute, we're failing massively. And it's coming from just mistakes. And look, we'll get onto it in a little bit. But yeah, we came out in the second half, and you're hoping for a reaction, and we got that. In fairness, we did get a reaction. We were the better team in the second half for large periods. 15 might have been a little bit of an over exaggeration from myself. 20, 25, 30 minutes, we were the better side in that second half. We had a couple of efforts saved. Force had one that was tipped over the bar. Doak had one which was tipped around the post. But yeah, it was all really Borough just having territory in Preston's half of the pitch. The goal we actually score is from our man of the match on the day. He's trying his absolute hardest to create for us, and he scores a top goal yesterday. Look, he's a bit fortunate that Preston defender slips, but composure to just block out all the noise from the red wall behind the goal, which are urging him on to shoot. And he creates himself a really good opportunity by faking, rolling his foot on top of the ball, and he just slots the ball in the back of the net. And at that point in the day, you only felt that the game was going one way. And obviously the Doak chance that I was mentioning a moment ago and the Force one follow that goal, it felt like the tide had turned in the game, and it felt like it was only a matter of time. But as mentioned, once again, mistakes from players in the team just cost us again and again and again. And it's just points every week that you say, "Oh, well, if it was a one-off, you could accept it, but it's week in, week out at this point. It's not good enough. It simply isn't good enough." The goal itself, and from my view in the away end, you saw Morris pass it back to one of the two, Ayling or Vandenberg, and both of them have got their hands on the knees. And I'm thinking, what have you got your hands on your knees for? Having watched it back, they've clashed heads. Hit the deck, sit down. There's all like you mentioned the point about Ayling in midweek bollocking the steward. Where's your game management now? You've just clashed heads, pressing us in our box.
Yeah, I
Hit the
think
deck. You've got a head
yeah,
injury.
I think you can also say in this case, and I'm certainly not blaming Morris, but given that he is being pressed, but you've got two people hands on knees, kind of looking down. A little bit of me thinks should Aidan Morris try and turn out, but it also just come from the fact that Glover makes a save, and it's a bit of an odd save. He kind of just like gets a shoulder on it. Fry heads it out to him, where, to be fair, he does kind of what he needs to do. He gets it to the next Borough shirt. And then it comes back in, which is sort of the first point where you think, oh, what is he doing? Why have we just gone back into the danger zone, really? And then what follows is just absolutely. I said yesterday, I posted on Twitter, you could have gone to any Sunday league, and that goes from blokes who have been out last night and had 10 pints and finished off the night with a kebab to under sevens who are playing on tiny pitches and just chase after the ball. You won't see a worse goal conceded at any level of football than what we have than the goal that's lost us that game. It is. I I I just can't wrap my head around what Luke Ayling is thinking, and especially as we said, in terms of what he showed on Tuesday, he's the one player that you'd expect. He's played what, 400, 500, 600 games in his career. Why is he trying to do a drag back in his own 6-yard box whilst he's being pressed by a Preston forward? Just leather it
And
anywhere.
and also doing a drag back when having already just been facing that way, he knows Emil Reese,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
one chasing him down, and Emil Reese has stood that side. Yeah, from a Preston point of view, you're absolutely giggling silly because they've had two chances in the game and they've scored both of them.
I actually have no words to how we lost that football match yesterday. And I know that's not great for a Middlesbrough podcast, but how? How have
Yeah,
Borough done it again? Another individual error.
yeah, and the point on individual errors, as I mentioned, is that it's simply not a one-off. It's simply all too frequent, and we are currently top of the league for errors leading to goals.
At least we're top of the league at something.
8 errors leading to goals. They just sap the life out of you. I was stood there in the away end yesterday, just in utter disbelief at what I'd seen. Two players, two defenders in your own area stood 2 yards away from each other with the hands on the knees, the hands on the head, and yeah, you can make the point about game management in midweek, but look, if you hit the deck yesterday, there might have been, and look, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt here because you've clashed heads, you're probably dazed, you probably are a bit shaken as to what where you are, even in some instances. Hit the deck.
Yeah,
You've hurt yourself. If you hit the deck, the referee stops the game. None of the calamitous defending that unfolds in the moments after that happens if either of you hit the deck. If both of you hit the deck, even better, great, fantastic. The goal definitely doesn't happen if you both hit the deck.
even on that point though, I understand in the heat of things, you've both banged heads. Look, they could have done that. I understand what you're saying. But even if we just say like they're in the heat of the moment, they don't think, right, I'm going to consciously hit the deck. I haven't hurt myself that much. They've probably seen loosely that Aidan Morris has got the ball, and they're probably neither of them are expecting him to play back into the danger. Even at that point, you're slightly dazed. You think to Luke Ayling, just leather it, just kick it out for a throw in and then go down. Because it initially sort of goes to the left of him and he tries to drag it back across himself, and you just think, just literally anywhere will do. And it sort of brings me on to this point because I must say Carrick's come under a lot of criticism as of late, and I think a lot of it has been deserved. Yesterday, I think he's coached a Middlesbrough win and been let down by his players. I don't think that Carrick can account for that yesterday. And I don't think many people would agree. But then I also seen the point today, and it'd be interesting to hear your point of view as well, because some of those errors, I think it's play style that has kind of caused Middlesbrough players to find themselves in certain positions where it's a case of if you lose the ball there, you're going to concede. Are we just very unlucky? Are we just having these constant lapses of concentration? Or is it a case of the football that Middlesbrough play is high risk, high reward? But with that high risk, the players that are attempting to play high risk football at the back under pressure is just resulting in us basically being league leaders for individual errors leading to goals. Because I think, and I've spoken to people, and I'm sure you have, and I'm sure everyone's got their own opinion on why it is, but I think that's the only logical reason that I could put my finger on, because those errors, one or two a season, you'd say it happens. It does happen. It's football. You know, it's not FIFA. But to have had as many as what we've had, that can't just be a fluke.
Well, it's not a fluke. It's that they're simply just not good enough to be able to either play the way that we want to play, or that players are just letting each other down. Morris, the pass into either of them,
It's not
whoever
great.
he's aiming at, whether it's Vandenberg or Ayling, it's a shit pass. It's an awful pass
And
to
you're going back
either
into
of them.
danger.
You're
That's the
going back.
worst part. Even if it's a great pass, you're still going back into where the danger's just happened.
Yeah, exactly. They've just had a chance. Tom Glover's just had to make a save, pretty much one on one against Emil Reese. He's made that save, and you've passed it backwards where they have four players within, I don't even know, 10 yards of our opposition box, of our own box. Sorry, it's just poor all around. But yeah, as mentioned, the curse of Borough selling out grounds away from home that allow for an away following more than 4,000 and failing to win the game on the pitch is it continues really. Don't get anything at Preston. Don't get anything at Blackburn usually. Barnsley, anywhere that we travel with big numbers, they always let you down. So when we got Blackburn in April, we might have won 10 games on the spin. I'm not bothered. I'm not going.
I think that's a wise decision, to be honest. Nathan, I don't want to spend any longer talking about that absolute shower of you know what for the goal. There was a couple of performances yesterday, especially, which I felt massively were just a major letdown again. And instead of kind of just singling them out in terms of what they produced yesterday or even for weeks prior to that, I want to talk to you about the team and what's going to go up against Sunderland, and then we'll move on to obviously what Sunderland have to offer. But we spoke about Morgan Whittaker, and obviously he's going to be an option, an attacker. We spoke about Latty Laugh's future and where that's going to leave Middlesbrough. I think two of the main performances which felt like letdowns for me yesterday, as well as Luke Ayling, who I thought just looked not good at all. But it's not really too much of a shock. I don't really come to expect Luke Ayling to be the Luke Ayling of sort of 5 years ago at Leeds United. Firstly, and I guess you could say chucked in at the deep end a little bit, hasn't played an awful lot of football. Marcus Forss through the centre, given his big opportunity, didn't really give Michael Carrick an awful lot to think about. Didn't give for and I've been one of the advocates of giving him a go. Didn't really give much in terms of, an argument for that. Oh well, if Latty Laugh goes or Conway's injured, we've got Marcus Forss. He'll do a job. He's a great finisher. It kind of took me all the way back to some of the early performances as a striker under Chris Wilder, where you thought, what have we bought here? If he gets a chance, he'll probably score, but his overall play, I'm not 100% sure. And, Michael Carrick clearly doesn't view him as a striker. It was more his hand was forced yesterday, pardon the pun. In terms of the other performance in the attack, and I know we spoke about him last week, Finn Azaz. What has happened to him?
Yeah, it's
He even looks sad on the pitch, Nathan.
yeah, he does. Look, he's one of those players you can just tell the sort of character that he is, the sort of shy, quiet character that doesn't parade himself on social media. I don't think there's any ego there. I think he's simply a confidence player, and when he's on it, he's brilliant, and when he's not, it's just not.
Well, it's like playing with 10 men, if we're going to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah. He's a couple of moments yesterday. You just saw him and Dork and other players just not on the same wavelength, and balls are going astray, balls being passed out of play, and it just in the end nothing was clicking. There was only one instance really in the first half where Azaz played a brilliant ball in behind the fullback for Dork to run onto, and the keeper just got there ahead of him. But apart from that, a very sort of quiet day again for Azaz. And as much as Alex Gilbert can provide you something, I don't think that he's necessarily the guy that you can lean on to be that super sub off the bench. There's been a lot of talk in the week about whether Whittaker can play in that role behind the striker. Pretty good finisher. So hopefully, if we are going to revert back to the left back bombing on in the inverted winger player, then Whittaker may be playing that Chuba Akpom role. So we'll wait and see on that front. But Chris, I can't believe that this game's come around as quick as it has again. And I thought that, if I'm totally honest, that the game and the start of the season for them was a little bit of a flash in the pan with old Regis getting off to a flyer up the road. They got off to a real good start, but they've continued on. They've been nothing short of fantastic all season. And I'm going to be totally honest, and it pains me to say it, but I think they are one of the best. I think they are second best in this division this season. I think they're better than Sheffield United, and I think that they're better than Burnley. I think that they are a team that is got a good, solid foundation at the
They're
back.
everything that we're not.
Yeah, good, solid foundation at the back. Not many mistakes, really. They've got a question mark over Patterson, the goalkeeper, who the question marks are amazing considering he's linked to Premier League moves every window. They've got two fantastic fullbacks, a midfield that will pretty much decide the game on Monday, I fear. And at the minute, I think that their midfield's stronger than ours. They've got a plethora of players in that middle of the pitch. Obviously, they've already got a man extra in the middle of the pitch playing 4-3-3, and they've got some fantastic players in there. Neil, Bellingham, Chris Rigg as well. Fantastic players. They've been using Lefay off that left hand side. Right wing, we know Roberts.
I think the real danger man, Isidore, I've seen him described as the championship Thierry Henry. He's athletic, he's tall, good in the air, quite quick, pretty decent finisher. And his movement in and around Dale Fry and Rav van den Berg does worry me.
In short, I am shit myself, really. I'd have 0-0 right now.
It's the first time in a long time I've genuinely gone into one of these games. And bearing in mind, over the last few years, we've had a pretty good record against Sunderland where I'm almost thinking I expect us to lose this game. Even earlier on this season, I really went into that game thinking that we could win. I'm going into this game expecting us to lose. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm the same, if I'm honest, Chris, which is really sort of damaging. How
It's totally disheartening, really, isn't it?
yeah, it is the fact that despite me enjoying the journey that we're currently on, which is ironic considering all I've done is mourn so far this podcast. As much as I'm enjoying signing some really good players, we still find ourselves in the last 3 years since them being in the division, we now find ourselves behind them. And they started from afresh, coming up from League One. Literally that is me all summed up. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It is really as sort of cutthroat as we don't know what team we're gonna field next week, and that is
Both in
down.
terms of the performance and the
Yeah,
people within that team, individuals. It's an awful lot is up in the air. And I think, to be honest, in terms of the next podcast, this has been a 2-game podcast with all of the transfers and everything else, plus the long pauses whilst me and Nathan have been trying to find the right words to sum up what Sunderland are potentially going to do to us. But I think next week's podcast is going to be just as long, and it's going to be one game shorter. But there's so much up in the air that it's all hypotheticals, as you say, and you've just got to kind of hope that the right Borough turn up and the right type of performance that we've seen against the Sheffield Uniteds at home, the West Broms at home and away, and performances like that. Really, I think that's the point where I'm at with. I just hope.
it's I'm pinning everything on hope, Chris. But the meme, the our expectations for you were low, but holy
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
really hoping that we don't see that next week. But yeah, what a long podcast that was, Chris. A lot of things to discuss. Two signings in the door. Hopefully a couple more to come in the next week or so. A couple of outgoings of fringe players. A big one that might be heading out the door in the next week. Fingers crossed that he doesn't and that he's fit. And yeah, hopefully after a consistently inconsistent week, hopefully we can throw some consistency together. And even if it's just a case of win one, lose one, win one, that'd do me.
Yeah. Who knows where we'll be this time next Monday? Tuesday. Well, God knows when the podcast will be out because we've got deadline day and all of the rest of it. Plus, it's a Monday night game. I suppose we do have a long break after that. But yeah, if you have enjoyed this one, hopefully it keeps you ticking over until we've got a monster podcast following deadline day, the closure of the window, and Sunderland. And thank you ever so much for watching and listening. If you've got to this point, thank you ever so much. Please do drop us a comment, drop us a like. Audio platforms, obviously you can't rate and review, as I always do say so. And that has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast. We hope you've enjoyed, and we hope this time next week, or maybe it's not this time next week, this time roughly a few days after this time next week, the podcast can, and the season in general, can really, really get onto a positive, kick-started roller coaster of the charge to promotion. We'll see you again next week with another episode of the Boropolis podcast.